So I think success for me now is like that unwavering confidence that you don't need the backing of a massive company to do amazing work or like lead projects that you feel passionate about. I think for me, success is now feeling that confident that anything I do, I know I'm going to bring value.
Hi, and welcome to Indian Explorers. In this podcast, we talk about Indian success stories. I am Sabrina, and together with my co host Amit, we will get to understand the journey of our guests and what drives them. The optimism, patience, idealism, and courage, these are their attributes that we want to bring to life in our conversations with them. If you enjoy the show, please hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Hi, I wanted to talk to you about something.
Good afternoon, Sabrina.
Good
Nice
afternoon.
Christmas tree.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's the
It's the last
holidays.
last month of the year already.
That's right. It's that time of the year. And
I love Christmas.
I love the season. But you know what? I did not anticipate telling you this, but since you brought up my Christmas tree, yesterday, Naima, my 10-year-old, who you know well, asked me if like Noel and I are the ones that move the elf every night and also if Santa's real. And so I'm a little heartbroken. I did not tell her the truth. I told her, I wasn't ready. So I said, "Do you believe in Santa?" She said, "I do, but my friends keep telling me it's you and daddy." And I was like, "Well, I believe in the Christmas spirit. So it's up to you." And she said,
That's
"I
interesting. That's interesting because I just booked tickets for Chandani and the three boys to go on to India on holiday, and on the 24th of December, if you book a ticket, it's considerably cheaper
Oh
than
yeah.
if you book any other day, especially in those last 2 weeks. So yesterday we told Gotham that on the 24th of December, he's not going to be with me and he's going to fly to India to see his grandparents. And obviously Chandni is ecstatic to go see her mom and dad, but Gotham was gutted, saying, no, I want to wait for Santa. I want to open up the gifts with dad and I don't want to go.
Yeah.
So that was
It's
sweet.
tough.
Yeah, we didn't
Yeah.
obviously we didn't tell him nothing about Santa, but
Yeah.
uh, it's a tough one.
Yeah. I'm
Anyway,
trying to make it extra magical because I think this might be the last year she really believes. So we'll
mhm.
see. I'll keep you posted. I did want to talk to you about something else, though. I feel like this week, in the news, we heard of a few great losses of people who've impacted this world in some way. One being Henry Kissinger. He was 100 years old. He was the 56th Secretary of State in the United States. He was a global diplomat, helped reshape the world, a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. So, a big loss for the Western world.
If you ask me, he was a very, very, very bad man.
Oh, did not
Yeah.
expect that.
Did you
Tell me
know?
more.
Did you know that after he won the Nobel laureate, two people from the committee resigned immediately?
I did not read that.
Yeah. No, you can look it up. This is true.
Really?
Yeah.
Is this because of what he did on,
He
what he,
he he is responsible for more deaths than yeah, I'm going to say it. He's responsible for more deaths than Hitler.
okay, that's a bold statement.
Thank you. Yeah, he's killed a lot of innocent people. Now, I know he
By
is
furthering the Vietnam War? Is this like how did he do this?
okay. So he's done some good things. He's helped with the relationships with Russia and China during Cold War, and he's
Yeah.
actually attributed for neither of the three countries going nuclear. So for many, he is a peacemaking, foreign strategic director and very intelligent person. But uh, for many countries, you mentioned Vietnam, uh, to stop supplies from going into Vietnam, the countries neighboring Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, he carpet bombed them. And he gave the order to carpet bomb so that people could not go and provide supplies to Vietnam. Until today, if you go to Cambodia or Laos, there are lots of bombs and like these bombs that could be mines, because they're all little like
Mhm.
small
Mhm.
balls, and
Mhm.
children are picking them up and boom,
Yeah.
they're like destroying. So he really caused a lot of damage to civilians in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. And as you know, I live in Chile. In Chile, he was hated to another level. People
Mhm.
celebrated his death. Yeah, I'll
And
tell you
why?
what happened. In 1973, Chile had a democratically elected president who is socialist slash communist. His name was Presidente Allende. And, let's just say Kissinger and the American foreign policy did not want a communist in a country as influential as Chile. And, they're obviously going more for the democratic values. And they wanted to get him out. And they actually supported, with guns and money, they supported a military coup,
Mhm.
which failed, but eventually um the dictator Pinochet, Pinochet
Mhm.
came onto power. And he came onto power for over 10 years. And in his reign, he killed too many innocent people. And he was one of the most brutal dictators you're going to hear about. He did something similar in Pakistan when he helped the Pakistan with his money and arms to go towards east. What's it called? Timor. I don't know how you pronounce it, but basically, which what's now called Bangladesh. He
Okay.
helped kill a lot of people in Bangladesh to the east of Pakistan.
Clearly,
Um,
I'm not well versed on Henry Kissinger, because
I
a lot
haven't
of
finished it.
never.
Yeah, he helped. He became friends with dictators in various other countries, including Argentina. You can look it up. It's called the Dirty War.
Would
Um,
you
you
compare
know,
him to Hitler?
I mean,
That's
he's a bad man, Sabrina. He's a real bad
why do
man.
you think here in the US he's celebrated? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think the Western world, like I mean, we
Well,
isolate ourselves from the rest of the world?
if you think about it, he's like, look at Netanyahu. Netanyahu today in Israel,
Mhm.
for the West, he's a hero protecting his people, but
Yeah.
for the entire Arab world and most countries who humanity overtakes, capitalist values, Netanyahu is a war criminal,
Yeah.
right? For carpet bombing, what he's doing right now at Gaza. Now,
Mhm.
Gaza, you've got 15,000 civilians died. I'm talking about this guy is responsible for the death of easily 1 million people and displacing 3 million people. And not just one time, many times. Now, back then, there was no social media. Back then, it was just, Gorbachev and Russia versus America. And
Mhm.
thanks to his relationships with Russians and Chinese, he kept us from a nuclear war. He won the Peace Prize,
Yeah, he
for stopping,
absolutely did. So
for,
I'm shocked to hear all this.
yeah. So, at
But
the
then
end,
again, I'm not, like I said, an expert on Kissinger or that, a history buff on that time, on that era. But, this week when he passed, all you heard about is, his how scholarly he was, how respected he was, how, his global diplomacy was like no other. Um,
he was a master negotiator. You
Clearly.
know, I
Yeah.
mean, to be Secretary of State for both a Republican and a Democrat president back to back takes brains, balls, and a lot of dirty work. But all I'm saying is that I'm surprised he reached 200, but he has a lot of enemies. And honestly, for me, bad man. For me, yeah, the good
Okay.
people and bad people. For me,
I'm
he's a
going to
bad
see
person.
which role on this one. I did
Yeah,
want to talk. We did not talk about this person, but before, I know you want to talk about another, genius who passed away this week. But
a
I
good
did want to
man.
talk about a female, Rosalind Carter. Um, Jimmy Carter's wife
Wife.
passed away this week, and she was 96, I believe. She advocated for the arts, furthered programs related to the community, the elderly, and was a big advocate for mental health. And a lot of people credit her with bringing mental health to the forefront of, you know, conversations today. So that was
Good
another
woman.
great who passed away. Yeah,
Good woman.
absolutely. All
Yeah.
right. You
No,
wanted
the
to
other
talk
good.
Charlie
Well,
Munger.
Warren Buffett's billionaire partner,
Mm-hmm.
investor galore. Uh, he and Warren Buffett have a following which is, like a cult following. Anything they say, anything they write is being quoted 1,000 times.
What?
He has a
Say Warren's last name?
Buffett,
Buffet. We say
Buffet,
no, I say Buffett.
Buffett. Yeah, you know me and my pronunciations. Um, the guy has written books, and you can Google or tweet. There are 1,000 tweets and things about him. I've highlighted the three that have
Okay.
impacted me, that I think about, if I don't mind me sharing. Um, the first one is, he's a strong believer in learning throughout your life, and he said that most of the learning happens through reading, right?
This is
So
Charlie who said that.
Charlie, yeah. So his
Warren
first
Buffett
quote: "In my
partner.
whole life, I have known no wise people who didn't read all the time. None, zero."
Hmm.
Yeah. So reading for him was absolutely critical, and it's true. Most people,
Yeah.
who are successful today are all readers. The second one is, investing. It's not about being in the market or timing the market. It's all about being patient, right? So the big money is not in the buying and selling, but in the waiting.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, same type, same example. The stock market is designed to transfer money from the active to the patient.
Aha. Patience.
Yeah, yeah, it's
That's something
beautiful.
I don't have with investing. And Noel always reminds me, patience. This is long term.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I mean, him and Warren, the fact that they're doing what they're doing at this age is just a sign of longevity.
Yeah.
And the third one, and the one that I want to talk about a little bit, is he managed to get out of the word envy. He never had envy for anybody. Now, granted, he was a billionaire, so maybe if you're a billionaire, maybe Sabrina, you and I would have no envy about anybody. And he also didn't go through the whole Instagram era that we're going through.
Yeah.
But he basically said that the idea of caring that someone is making money faster than you are is one of the deadly sins.
Hmm.
Envy is a really stupid sin because it's the only one you could never possibly have any fun at. Yeah.
That's
And
a good.
generally speaking, we get the results in this world that we deserve. This is not a moral judgment. What happens is what happens. Basically, he said, when people go up to him and they say, hey, do I deserve this wife? I'm really after this girl. What do you think? He goes, make yourself worthy of her. So
Yes.
improve
Yeah.
yourself and she'll come to you.
100%.
Yeah.
That reminds me, because you're talking about money. We had family over last week for the Thanksgiving holiday, and we were playing a game, and it said, if you had to pick one right now, which one would you pick? Um, Money or time? What's more valuable to you, money or time? So you answer that.
I mean, for me, it's time, without doubt.
Same. Yeah.
Time
I think
is,
with the family in the room, 75% picked money. I picked time.
again, if I wasn't doing well, or maybe if I was homeless,
Yeah.
or if I didn't know where my next meal was coming from, the answer would definitely be money. But once you reach a certain level of
Yeah.
decency and shelter, and the Maslow,
So
whatever it's called.
subjective. What's
Yeah,
important? What
yeah. And
matters to
now,
you?
we're not 20 anymore, right? I'm on my late 40s. So for
Hmm.
me now, time, especially when I see three little sons that I've got, time is
Exactly.
everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
I did
Yeah.
have one quote of Charlie Munger's that made me think of you. When with regards to AI, he said, "I think old-fashioned intelligence works pretty well." So
Not
that was
surprising.
interesting. Yeah,
I
he
mean,
was an
him,
old school guy.
yeah. Do you know him and Warren missed the entire technology boom? They never
Yeah.
invested in Google, Yahoo, Cisco, none of these companies. And only recently did they invest in Apple, a small
Oh.
chunk of their fortune.
Hey, and today, before we bring on our guest, I wanted to tell you another great loss. I realized when we were talking right now, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who was the first U.S. Supreme Court justice in the United States, passed away at the age of 93 due to complications with dementia. So some really great individuals this week. And then one that, we can agree to disagree on, which is totally fine. I honestly, like I said, I'm not an expert on Kissinger, but, you know,
Yeah,
definitely changed the world in, some form
no,
of another.
no doubt, super influential.
Yeah. So today's guest might be changing the world as well. So let's bring him on. Okay, today we are diving into the extraordinary career of Ankit Vij, a seasoned marketing professional who has navigated the ever evolving landscape of social media. He's worked at Meta, Instagram, and Vimeo, to name a few. Ankit's story unfolds from managing multi-million dollar brand accounts to leading impactful cultural activations. So, thank you for being here with us today. I'm excited to hear about all you've been doing.
Thank you so much for that intro, Sabrina. You definitely made me feel very important there.
Yeah,
I'm super happy to be here with you both.
well, you are. So, thank you for being here.
Hi, Ankit. How you doing?
It's great to see you again. Excited for today's catch up.
Where you at right now? You look like in a nice place.
Coming to you live from my apartment in Brooklyn, New York, rainy Brooklyn, New York. So I got the Christmas tree going on because outside doesn't look too pretty right now. So trying to make it as cozy as possible here.
Ah,
That's
Christmas in
nice.
New York. That's the
I
best.
know. Best month of the year too. My birthday's next week on Tuesday, so December is
Ah,
always my favorite.
excellent. Well, happy early birthday. Cheers.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sabrina, you're not going to sing Mariah Carey songs today, are you?
I don't want a lot for
Oh.
Christmas.
Her streams are definitely up. This is that time of the year. Mariah Carey has the
It's
music
it's still
industry in the lock.
it's still the number one song, right, for Christmas
Always,
worldwide.
I
always.
think so. And like she has her own Christmas tour now.
Anywhere you go, you're going to be hearing it now. Coffee shops, when you go to
Come on,
retail
it's the
stores,
best.
restaurants.
Like
Yeah,
just
it's the best.
lifts your spirit.
100%.
Yeah, I like Let It Snow, but it is a catchy tune, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're not here to talk about Mariah, although we probably can for an hour. But Ankit, tell us your story. Where did it start? Your parents moved here. You were born in the U.S.
Yeah.
Tell us
So
about
definitely had a very interesting growing up experience and background generally. So I was actually born in Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. Don't actually talk about it too publicly. I realized over time, but was born there. My dad was teaching at the facility at University of Idaho, and my mom was, working a night shift at the hospital over there. So I was actually born there, and then I think a few years later, we actually moved back to India for a month because my dad got a job that he was, a dream job essentially at IIT. So we went back to India. It didn't work out too well, and then ended up coming back to the States. And then that kind of took us to Lancaster, California, where I grew up. Spent a large part of my life there. So
where's
yeah,
Lancaster, California? Like, where are you close to? What big city?
yeah, so it's about an hour north of downtown LA, so right behind the San Bernardino Mountains. So distance-wise, it's not too far, but because they have the mountain range there, it's like a little out of the way. But definitely a very interesting, eclectic mix of people. I mean, you have people in the aerospace industry, a lot of Air Force and Air Force research lab employees. That's where my parents fell into in that bucket, where they were working for the Air Force. A
Okay.
lot of people that commute to downtown LA, ex-prisoners. So California is one of the largest prisons, also in Lancaster, California. Um, Ex-gang members that were, exported from South Side and Central Side, all kind of found their way up that way too. So it was definitely an interesting, I think, place to grow up. But it definitely, over time, I've also realized it did shape my perception and how I see myself in the world, and made me kind of who I am today. And I, for a long time, didn't want to, celebrate that or even like pay attention to it, but it definitely is will always be home for me too.
Did you
What was your dad doing?
do?
Sorry, what was your dad doing at IIT? You mentioned.
Yeah, so both my parents are actually chemists. So they spent their schooling studying chemistry, and then when they came to the States, my dad was finishing up his PhD program. My mom was also kind of doing some schoolwork at the University of Idaho, in addition to some of her work at the hospital during her night shifts. But they both worked for the Air Force Research Lab, doing incredibly crazy type of experiments, work that sent rocket ships, spaceships up into the space. So they worked on all the materials that actually went into those
Oh, that's
vessels.
fascinating.
So it sounds great, but very dangerous also. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, they both had pretty successful careers, but both specifically had accidents that became the end of their careers there. Luckily,
Really?
they were not impacted too greatly in terms of they're alive and they're well, but they did have some pretty big injuries to their career, and I'm glad they're around.
Where were they?
This was at
Where were these accidents?
yeah, so this was Edwards Air Force Base in California. So, it was kind of part of the job. I think that's what filled them. Like my mom has a few patents. Like she's been recognized for her work by the Air Force, and she's done incredible things. My dad as well. He's done research around the world. Spent time overseas. Was teaching a lot of chemistry, organic chemistry. I hope he doesn't hear too much of this part because I was supposed to be a chemist or tried to, and it's just not for me. But their work was highly respected in their scientific community, so they love what they did. Unfortunately, like I think it was a universal sign that rewarded them for their hard work, and they were able to retire early and focus on some of their passions and really just focus on being family members to each other, to their families. So I think it was a blessing
Wow.
in disguise in a lot of ways too.
Sounds like we should have got them on the
I
episode.
know.
Yeah, I can happily nominate them. Can happily nominate them. But I
No, it
think
sounds
Yeah.
fascinating. I want to read more about them.
yeah, they definitely have very interesting stories that it's better that they share. And every time my friends meet my parents, I always love when they're sharing some of their stories about
Yeah.
things that they worked on, the security clearances they had to get for their jobs. Like it kind of feels very like movie-esque. But I think that's what made growing up so interesting and very unique is they had this incredible career and background. And I think like being Indian American, there's kind of this imposition that the kids will also follow in the STEM route. But from what I can remember, always growing up, music and I think entertainment were such a big part of our household. Like my grandmother, who has basically lived with us since I was born, studied classical music back in India. My dad definitely still has one of the most interesting tastes in music that range anywhere from like Lata Maningeshkar to U2, Snoop Dogg, Red Hot Chili Peppers. So I was growing up kind of just taking this all in. Movies were always on. So I think it took time for me to really understand what that meant for me. But in a lot of ways, that's what made me feel represented or seen in a lot of ways because where I grew up, not a huge Indian community. I also played competitive basketball for a large part of my life. So in a lot of ways, it felt like I was almost closer to Black culture, and I have deep respect and admiration for Black culture because that was kind of what my community was. My coaches, teammates, some of my best friends spent a lot of time at my teammates and my friends' houses, and I felt almost like an outcast within the Indian community because that was very after school program, Kumon type of things. So it felt multi-dimensionals in a lot of ways. But at home, like just exposure to Indian culture through the arts and entertainment, I think that was something I grew up with. And I could be playing competitive basketball in Houston, Texas one weekend, and then the following weekend doing bunga at like our local Indian association event or party for Diwali. So it kind of gave me, I think, exposure to different parts of my identity and culture that I'm still kind of working through. But over time, I've really like understood that you don't have to necessarily be one thing or the other. I think it's kind of made me respect and appreciate different parts of my identity. But music and I think the arts definitely gave me a lens for that.
So Sabrina, apart from doing Mariah Carey, she can sing Boys to Men as well,
Oh
Oh,
and
wow,
I can sing NWA,
I could bring
very
and I can sing NWA.
some
So
Beyonce.
we're in sync.
yeah. There we go.
We're in sync.
Not to bleep a couple words out there, but I love that there's
On
multi
this
talent.
podcast, we don't bleep. We don't bleep
There
stuff.
we go.
No, on this podcast, yeah,
No,
no
everything
need.
goes.
So let's talk about your career.
Yeah.
Sabrina mentioned in the beginning, Vimeo, Meta, Instagram. Where should we begin? Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, I think a big focus on it was really right around high school. I had this dream of making it to the NBA and being like the first Indian basketball player up until eighth grade, and then unfortunately had like a pretty bad injury to my knee that required minimal surgery a few years later. But I was playing through it and wasn't a great idea. Should have definitely like, fixed it in that moment. But I think knowing that okay, basketball is not really what's going to help me grow and get out of the city I was growing up in and go on to do great things that my parents and community aspired for me. I think having that shift of basketball to all right, what's going to be the best thing that I can do to elevate outside of this? School became the topic, right? And I think having a knee injury at that time, I made the dire mistake of telling my parents I might want to be a knee surgeon. Didn't know what that meant. Didn't know what like what is a part of that process or what the schooling process is like or anything that's required of that. But
Organic chem is part of that, isn't it?
exactly. And I honestly like as soon as I started the coursework for it too, I was like, this is not it.
Yeah.
But thought like maybe that's the route I want to go. So obviously, growing up in the South Asian household, science, doctor, lawyer, engineer, that's kind of like what's the options available to you. But I think like
You saw the bill.
yeah,
You saw the bill of your knee surgery, and you said this is a good way to go.
exactly. Thankfully, the insurance covered a good part of it, but I was like, damn, this is and America in our healthcare system now, like spent some time in London over this past year and just seeing the difference in quality of care and like how fast you can see, but also the cost. Definitely can speak about that for a length of time. But yeah, I think this focus on school was almost like what are you really trying to do or what are you passionate about? And luckily, I think my parents have such a great emphasis on education that they were really pushing me to go that way. Unfortunately, for a lot of my teammates, my best friends, community, it didn't go that way. They didn't have resources. They didn't have two-parent homes. Gang violence was pretty prevalent. I unfortunately lost a few friends before even graduating high school to it. And I think like having that support system really pushed me out. So I was able to, lock in, zone in. My parents actually moved cities for me to go to a better high school. Out of the 8 high schools, 2 of them were semi okay for you to go to college. So they moved me to one of the colleges that did have somewhat of a good program to get people into colleges. Started playing basketball there. And over time, like once I got into college too at UC Berkeley, even there, I kind of started feeling out of place. Like I didn't grow up in a place that had a great education system. I realized my education or knowledge of a lot of subjects like math or things that people were getting through easily at Berkeley, I was, on the verge of failing. So, a year and a half in, I was actually placed on academic probation at Berkeley and almost had to make a decision to drop out. But there was marketing classes I was taking that definitely were on my mind, or like that was the kind of topics I was really enjoying. So at that point, I didn't know anyone, didn't have a network, didn't see other Indian people or even just South Asians in general that worked in marketing or what that was. Had no idea what this could look like. Met a few people on campus, like found myself working internships that I don't even know if it's legal at this point, but was putting in like, 40 hours, 50 hours a week unpaid for some startups around the campus. There was some great accelerators being in the Bay Area. So was kind of getting my exposure to that industry. And I think that love or passion for music came up in an unexpected way where, over time I met someone from a company called SoundCloud, and SoundCloud was one of the premier kind of music platforms at that time. And they had a presence in San Francisco. San Francisco didn't have too many music companies or entertainment companies, but met someone from that
They were
company.
pioneers.
Yeah.
I remember SoundCloud.
Yeah, SoundCloud's great. I think the peak eras were 2015 to 2017 when everything was kind of happening on there. The Drake Meek Mill drama, the amount of independent artists. There's so much happening at that platform. So to me, I was like, I would love to like understand that you can get paid and listen to music all day, or like work with these creators and these artists all day and actually make money to pay
Was,
bills. Like that was so alien to me
was it
that you can do that.
was it after Napster? SoundCloud?
SoundCloud was after Napster. There was like I think some overlap within a couple of years, but I think Napster's kind of approach to the music industry was so different than SoundCloud. SoundCloud was
Illegal.
yeah, it
You
was. I think
guys,
it was
I
Illegal
had
is the word
so
you
many songs downloaded from Napster. I'm like,
yeah,
I was just waiting for the feds to knock on my door. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm going to prison.
But I mean, that was like such an interesting time, right? Like, how do you get music onto any type of device that you want to listen to? Like, we
Yeah.
saw the evolution from like cassettes to Walkmans, vinyls, like even vinyl coming back and making such a big resurgence in culture.
Yeah.
Like, I'm rebuilding a vinyl collection that my dad's even showed me his from the 70s. I'm like showing him mine that I started building in the last 5 years. So these new
Oh,
forms and formats
vinyls?
of vinyl, yeah.
Oh, that's
I'm an
cool.
avid vinyl listener just because that quality and that first initial scratch when you put a record on, hard to recreate that. But yeah, definitely a sidebar there. But essentially, yeah, I met this person from SoundCloud, and I think that was the first time I realized like this could be a way to make money. Like you can pay your bills. It could be a real career. So was able to actually secure like an internship for their first program ever in New York City. And they flew me out to New York. We had an apartment that I got to live in. It was like a high rise in Chelsea here in New York. It just felt like a very a bit different life that I had never envisioned. it seemed like a banker life, right? And I'm literally 20 years old. I can't even drink at this point. I'm in New York City, working at a company like that. So after that internship program, I think that's where everything kind of switched and changed. Where I saw that there's a way to make a career out of this and make money out of it. And I think that love I kind of had for arts and culture from my childhood, I realized there's like some way to kind of combine all of this together. So it's a long way of saying like it took me some time and I think a lot of failure to realize that this was something I wanted to pursue more. So even like graduation time from Berkeley, it was probably a hard decision I had to make in the time, and I'm so glad I made this decision. But it was either getting this $60,000 job in San Mateo, which was south of San Francisco, not an area I felt particularly excited about, but great pay at an auto startup. And it was either that or moving to New York City, making $45,000 a year. So guaranteed to be broke here, and working at an agency, working on some of the coolest brands, like Google, YouTube Music, Universal was part of their remit at the time too. DAZN, which is a streaming agency for sports. So it was like that. It was kind of that initial bet of, if I go to New York and like take this chance and like know my life's going to be significantly harder than it is if I stay where I am, where all my friends are, where my community is, and have this like stable paycheck, which way are you going to go? So I think having that desire, like that, again, passion for wanting to learn more about this arts and entertainment space and like digital, and marrying those three together, that's what really I think began most of this journey. So long story short,
Ankit,
yeah,
yeah, Ankit, I think from a time perspective, we need to jump into your most recent experience because I want
yeah,
to get into the famous
okay, yeah,
or infamous email you received. Can you tell us what you did first at Meta and
yeah.
Instagram, in the last 5 years before we talk about the blog?
Yeah, for sure. We can jump into that. Do you want me to talk about Vimeo at all? Because I think that was also kind of important just for setting context.
I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah,
I
if
mean,
it if it
Yeah,
gets
I can
the
breeze. I can
app,
breeze
do
through it.
it.
Yeah, I can breeze through that part. So yeah, long story short, was able to move out here to New York City. Worked at this agency, learned a ton, and then I heard about this company called Vimeo. Indian CEO. She worked her way up through marketing, and I thought this would be such an awesome experience to go learn from someone like that. So went, took a chance on going to Vimeo, enjoyed it, loved it, learned so much, and didn't actually want to leave. And when you get an email from Meta Recruiting, it was at Facebook at that time, you don't say no. So I was like, you know what, I love where I'm at right now, but let's see what this can actually look like, or
Okay,
what
so
this
you
can
had a
be.
recruiter reach out to you for
Yeah,
Meta.
so I had a recruiter reach out. Don't know how
Former
this happened
agent,
still to
for
this
people who
day.
don't know that.
Yeah, so I think this is an important lesson, that update your LinkedIn and be active on sharing. Like, I don't think I was doing it enough at that time, and I still am trying to get better at this. But had a recruiter reach out, that's one of those ones you don't say no to. And essentially over time, and it took 6 months for me to figure out like a role that was open that made sense. So it wasn't like I got an interview and had a job the next day. 6 months later, it's a job that I felt somewhat excited about. It wasn't initially what they came to me with, but went over to Meta to join the global business solutions team. So it was going to be working on the CPG and retail vertical. So something I never really had experience in. So it's things like Colgate, Procter and Gamble, some of the biggest CPG brands in the world. Um, I only knew really like entertainment, arts, culture, like so much of that world. So inherently there was like a little self-doubt about going to Meta to do something like that. But what I did know is like how to build digital marketing programs that had kind of the foundation to do so. So this felt like a new challenge in a lot of ways to kind of understand how to shape these skills to fit a different industry. And it was also my first time going into a sales specific role. I had spent, my time in marketing for the most part up until then. But this role technically was on the sales team at Meta. So when I did join there, immediately from the first day, I kind of felt out of place. Like, everyone's a little bit older than you. You're definitely not seeing that many people of color around. Everyone's kind of a seasoned industry executive that spent time growing businesses and then kind of came to Meta to share that expertise and help other brands do the same.
So
So,
you were essentially um you're in sales. So these big companies like Procter and Gamble, you're trying
yeah,
to get them to sell their ads on Facebook.
yeah. So essentially, like, it's almost guaranteed that all these companies are selling, or like doing some form of marketing programs on Facebook, Instagram, all these properties, right? The goal of this team was really to help these brands do it in a way that, one, serve product adoption. So if Instagram's testing a new feature or product, getting these brands to actually start using them too and spending money on the advertising inventory against it. And then kind of helping these brands redefine like their strategy in social, because obviously we've moved from a world that went from very heavy print to TV to now social. We see and discover a lot
Totally
of
different.
new
Yeah.
brands, commerce on social. So it's almost like helping these brands step into this new world and like really learn how to do this effectively. COVID was a great example, right? Where so many brands, they didn't have retail dependency in brick and mortar. They now have to build out, direct consumer types of models and businesses. So this team was such a great time in retrospect. Like I think I felt out of place and a little isolated in a lot of ways just individually, but I think in terms of my skill set and knowing how to step into a room when you don't look like everyone, but you can talk the talk and do the work and walk the walk, right? I think that's really where I leaned into. But there was still kind of that inkling to come back to the creator space and the artist space that I was missing so deeply at that point. Like I was essentially just helping Fortune 500 companies become richer, and that's not that satisfying and not that exciting either at the end of the day. So I
And then what about Instagram?
yeah,
How
so
did you move from Facebook to Instagram?
that was the thing. So I had this feeling, I think within 6 months, that I don't know how long I'm going to last in this role, right? I think that my first performance review also wasn't great. My work was great, but I wasn't doing the things you needed to do to be successful in a sales role. Was able to correct that over time through the help of mentors, but 6 months in, I knew this wasn't going to be the spot for me to grow. So I did talk to a couple of trusted, mentors and people that I really want to figure out how to go on the marketing team at Instagram. Coming from sales, almost everyone said this is nearly impossible and like it does not happen that much. And me being the crazy person I am and like having been told so many times in my life throughout different phases, I was like, there's no way you can't do it. Like someone has have to have done it before. So set up time with people on the marketing team at Instagram that I looked up to. We're sharing really cool work all the time. We had this like internal Facebook. So everyone has like their own Facebook feed, obviously, right? At Meta, you have an internal work version called a workplace. So people can constantly share updates on their teams, what work they're working on, accomplishments, things are leading. So I was like scouring that and seeing like, oh, who's this person? What are they working on? Things like that. And then setting up, one-to-ones with them, 30 minutes, learning about their world. Can I help you in any way? So it was a lot of that relationship building over the course of a year that finally got me into this position where there was an open role on the marketing team at Instagram. I had the background from my time at Vimeo, from my time at SoundCloud, from my time at the agency that could be a really good fit. And I think being internal, there's kind of like that upside that you have the skills or like kind of the knowledge to operate in that type of world in that role. So I think the relationship piece was such a crucial part of that and building that and like bringing value to these people before I even had a role on the team. To the point when I interviewed, like it was almost like a cakewalk at that point. I had known some of these people already. I knew what problems they were facing.
Like, it's
Me being
yours.
so yeah, sorry, what was that?
I said it's like, here, it's yours, the
Yeah,
position.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I knew, me.
But
I'm obsessed with pop culture and just culture generally. So I had ideas for them.
what did you do? What
So
did you do in Instagram? I'm still not clear.
yeah, so
What was the role?
moving into that creator marketing team, it was a fairly new team. So it started from like around 3 people to the time I joined, it was 30. So it was like almost like a mini startup at Instagram. But the goal of this team essentially was to be the partner for creators, artists, creatives on Instagram globally and help kind of them help educate these creators or these artists globally how to use some of the features or products that Instagram's working on or launching. So, Instagram obviously launched Reels, there's Instagram Live, there's Instagram music features. It's really doing the work of showing these people why it's actually important to be using that or how that can help elevate your career. So it's almost like a
Got it.
hybrid partnership marketing role and product
And would
marketing.
this be for existing artists who've already made it big or new artists trying to break into the industry or both?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is like a team at Instagram that kind of focuses on the established artists, right? The people that already have kind of careers. They might be signed to a label at the time. This work was really indifferent to where you are in the bucket. So this work could be impactful or useful for someone that might already have 100,000 followers. In the same way, it could be useful for someone that might have 10 followers, right? Someone that's maybe getting started in their creator journey. So I really enjoyed that work because a lot of it was shaping a lot of the products and the development. So like if we're going to test a new feature, what's the use of this feature? What's the value it's going to bring to a creator? Seeing a lot of like that product development work that literally millions of people will be using and like viewing. I think that scale was definitely scary at first, knowing how many people are using your products or features, but it was really cool to see like the backside of that, right? The things behind the curtains of how these things get tested, the amount of work that goes into it, and then also being that that partnership arm in helping people understand the value of it. I think oftentimes in marketing too, a lot of the work is a lot of telling instead of showing. So here's this new thing we launched, like that's it, right? Instead of showing the value, like walking through why it's helpful, sharing a
Can you
lot of
give
like
us an
what
idea
impact it was bringing.
of
Yeah,
exactly what you're saying? Give us an example of an artist that they used the platform and they saw the value. Like any artist that we know.
yeah.
I
So
like Doechii. Doechii. What's the name?
Doechii, yeah, Doechii is
What it is, yo? You know the
Doechii.
TikTok
I,
thing?
Doechii's
Yes,
that's probably my
beautiful
favorite.
voice.
I'm glad you went that way. Doechii's a great
Love her.
example. So I actually got the chance to meet Doechii at Coachella in 2022. So I had heard of Doechii. She did a track with Isaiah Rashad that I absolutely love, and she was at the party that we were throwing as part of our Coachella, activation. So every brand will be at Coachella to some degree, doing like a partnership party activation, whatever you want to call it. But it's really just to get everyone in one space, right? So I saw Doechii was there, and I saw that she was kind of starting to post more content on Instagram as well. Her label manager and people that she worked with over at Capitol Records were also at this party. So we kind of had this idea like, hey, do you want to share some tips on how you've grown over Reels the past like couple months? Because I noticed she was like definitely more active on it, right? She had a couple songs go viral on TikTok over the past 2 years, but this was prior to all of that happening. So she was like still relatively undiscovered. She was opening for someone at Coachella that year, not even like really headlining. So we had this idea to do like this editorial feature and like, can you share some tips? And I filmed it, asked her a few questions, like let her know that I was really excited about her career trajectory. And I think kind of the rest is history from there. Like she's had so many songs go viral. She ended up having such a major Coachella performance last year. And I think it's kind of just the start for a lot of her and artists like her too, right? People that are understanding the value that gets created from your audiences and your community on social platforms, but not letting it be like a restriction. So I think that's one inherent problem facing the music industry right now is this kind of unforced pressure that platforms like TikTok and Instagram sometimes might place on artists that you have to be a content creator now too, not just a musician. But I think TikTok has definitely been started a lot of that pressure in terms of making artists feel like they have to be video creators now too. But I think you have to use these things as tools necessarily, and ways to help elevate your work and how you share it. But I don't think it needs to be your medium unless you choose to. So I think that was like a pretty
Was this
impactful
your
time for me where I
last
was.
was this your last position at Instagram? Or was
Yeah,
there
so I was in this position for about 2 years, and it definitely like evolved. Initially, when I came on, I was focused on Instagram Live and Instagram Reels at the time.
okay.
We were starting to test different things in the music space, and me having my background and kind of just where my passion points lied, I saw that as an opportunity to really lean in and help build that out as well. So it was almost like I was taking on a second job in that sense, because no one else was doing it. So I kind of took on this work of leading our creator marketing efforts and really stepping in with our music partnerships team to help scale a lot of like what they're developing, learning. They were testing a few things that I thought were really interesting, like adding music to your photos, music to your photo carousels, which was a huge cultural phenomenon this past couple of years.
Yeah.
Things that I felt like are very impactful for everyday people that love the platform, but especially artists too. So yeah, this role definitely evolved from focusing on video products like Reels and Live to now focusing on everything Instagram offers, right? Like
Yeah.
DMs, stories, feed, Reels, Live, music,
You're
like
in this
kind of the whole deal.
position and then you get a dreaded email, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Before we do the email, I have one question.
Yeah.
Is there a war room? Is there a war room where where you enter the room and you're like, shit, this is what TikTok is doing this month. Shit, this is what Spotify is doing this
Oh yeah.
month. Like, guys, what do we do? What do we copy? What can we improve? Is there that type of war going on, or is it no?
Yeah. Oh my God. Of course, yeah. Like this is like definitely the fun part, but also the stressful part, right? There's constantly like this feeling of wanting to stay ahead of the times, but also making sure that your value or like your product is in parity with other platforms too, right? So anytime there was a new feature, or like if there was an article that went up about, TikTok's creator fund versus Instagram's, like there's inherently like a little bit of pressure that puts on of how do we do this better? How do we match this? Or is this something we should move away from because they're so hyper focused on this part of the world or this part of the ecosystem that we can make a splash in this other side too, right? So I think that's always been kind of prevalent in the tech space, especially. Think about Snapchat stories and then Instagram stories, right? You think about Reels and
Yeah.
TikTok. Like this kind of pressure I think is good because it keeps platforms fresh. I think a lot of people respond to these changes with a lot of apprehension and anger. Like you've seen the comments on, I think, Instagram anytime something gets launched that's new. Notes is a good example,
They
right?
hate it.
Yeah, like in DMs when you were able to add a note to the top of your DM box, people were like, "What the hell is this? Like this is so
Yeah, they
dumb."
hate it at the beginning.
Exactly. The same people that I saw, at least in my world, and then some other friends I talked about, they're the ones that are using this feature like every single day at this point, sharing their favorite song, sharing like where they're going to be. So I think it's a little bit of that too. It's like everyone loves to be a hater, but the adoption happens over time too. So I think you kind of got to stick to what you know. But I don't think that was always perfect at Instagram either, though. Like I think
Yeah,
music's a
but
great example. Like
thanks for
yeah,
yeah, thanks for answering that. I was hoping you'd answer that. Okay, back to Q4, since you're a
I
basketball
know.
lover.
Then you get
yeah.
some email, the dreaded email. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so initially we had our first major had the first major layoff announcement in November of last year, and unfortunately lost like a lot of great people on my team at that point, and it was kind of a wake up call, right? That we weren't safe from anything,
Yeah.
and I think that for
What
the
was it, Meta, or was it still Facebook by
so
then?
this, yeah, so
Was
like
it Meta by
all
then?
the apps report into Meta, right? Like they're all properties of Meta, but Meta is the one that makes kind of these decisions across the boards, and then the heads of the apps, so like an Adam Mosseri for Instagram, and each of the apps kind of has like someone that oversees it. They will kind of adjust in accordance to what the decision Meta is making. So this was a Meta decision, but November was kind of the first wake up call. Especially knowing it hit our team when a lot of people were saying this, we were fine from it, or we're going to be okay because our work is creator focused. Like this is such a company priority. So when that happened, I think like there was this thought in my mind for the first time of like the last 4 years were incredible and like things have evolved so much, but maybe this isn't it. Like maybe there's more outside of this. Like I think I was making more money I thought than I could ever make at that point. Which was, I think classic immigrant mentality where you think you have everything you can possibly get, it can't get better from that, and you want to hold on to that. So I think took a lot of earned learning, but fast forward to May, they told us in May your teams are going to find out about the second announcement of layoffs. Like this happened over March, April, May, essentially 3 separate rounds. But they said our teams, business and creative teams, will find out in May. So it was 6 months of just waiting, right? I'm supposed to be in a role where I'm speaking on panels, I'm making public appearances, I'm talking to creators, I'm having partnership meetings, building
Was it
out
during this
programs.
time you spoke at South by Southwest during
Yeah,
those
yeah.
6 months? Okay, and
Exactly. So
we'll get
imagine going to South by Southwest, speaking about all the
And then
wonderful things you're working on, and I'm like in the back of my mind, I'm like, shit, I don't even know if I'm going to be here in a few months where I can actually like see you again and we can like actually work on this, right?
I
It's
mean,
a lot
that's
of
like
like,
that's something on your bucket list. And you're
yeah,
at South
that
by
was
Southwest speaking about your
yeah.
job.
Honestly, when you put it that way, it was definitely one of the weirdest feelings. Like I was so happy and proud for a moment, but I was also like so
terrified.
nervous in the terms of like
Yeah.
this is insane that I'm like kind of going on business as usual right now, and then everything that's kind of leading up to that is like this big question mark, right? So
Yeah.
fast forward, everyone's kind of having these conversations, which I think are toxic looking back, but there's like this, you guys are going to be fine. Again, your work is important. For me personally, I kept being told like, we're going to put you up for a promotion. I was already on track for my second promotion at the time, had stellar performance reviews, had everything going. So as much as people were telling me that don't worry about it, I was like, there's no way I can't worry about this at this point, right? Like I've already seen it hit our team. So that morning of May 24th, they told us, we're gonna get an email 8 between 8 and 9 a.m. Decided this time around I'm not gonna like sit around and wait. So didn't check my phone for a while, didn't hear any notifications, and then of course 2 minutes before the hour, like I heard the ding. Picked my phone up, and there was like an initial shock when I read it back and forth a couple of times. I'm starting to get like text notifications, phone calls, because everyone starts to find out because you start looking up who's there, who's not, right? Your profile essentially goes deactivated right after. So
Immediately?
almost immediately, yeah, yeah. So we had email access, which they did this time. They didn't do it last time. So we had email access and we had time to actually like write, our messages or our goodbyes essentially. But you're able to find out like who's affected. So a lot was
That's
happening in
super weird.
10 minutes, right? So I think and it comes back to this like Kobe Bryant quote I heard later this year that I think reflected on, and I kind of want to live my life moving forward this way, but kind of like embracing and just processing the emotions or feelings you get at that moment, embracing it, understanding it, and then choosing how you want to react. I think at that point, I got the email, put the phone down, and I was like, okay, like in a lot of ways it felt relieving because I was like, there's not a question mark anymore. I know that this is how I need to go now. I don't know how we're gonna get there, but I know at least like there's not this hanging cloud. Um, but essentially, like it took a 4 month process of really understanding like what this really meant, right? You could be at the top of your performance, top of your level, be respected amongst like the community internally, externally, but something like this can still happen to you. So I'm glad to have learned this, I think, earlier in my career, and I think there's been so much processing. Big love and shout out to my therapist too. Like I think especially in the South Asian community, if you have the means, seek out therapy. There's so many, I think, unfortunate stories and statistics that back up, South Asian people not kind of pursuing mental health, South Asian men specifically. And I think for me personally, like there was so much that I've internalized or compartmentalized from the beginning of like kind of my childhood that I've understood played out in different ways, like career, family, relationships, things like that. And I think really getting to understand yourself is the best way to kind of understand how to move forward. Like it doesn't necessarily need to mean that something's wrong, but I think you need to understand how you process, how you're able to control thought patterns, behavior patterns. Like so much of that is actually what the impact you get from therapy is too. So I think that was such a great moment for me to go through that experience with her. And I love her to death. She's one of the best people I've ever come across. Definitely has pissed me off a few times, but it was so
That's
necessary.
so
And I think,
awesome, Ankit. And I love that
yeah,
you're talking about it.
I think you have to, right? It shouldn't be something that you feel so embarrassed or like weak about, and I think it's incredibly valuable for people, and everyone can only benefit from it. So she
Yeah.
actually was the one that inspired me to really think about how do you throw like a funeral or like a celebration of this phase of your life that you just had.
Yeah.
So I think that got
Is
me
it during
thinking, and I
this time?
realized,
Sorry, is
yeah,
it during this time you wrote that blog?
yeah. So
Okay.
we
So he
us
wrote
having
this
that
brilliant
discussion,
blog, right? I mean, through
yeah,
and you
so
sent it to me.
yeah,
I mean, I didn't know who Ankit was,
Yeah.
but the I read the blog that he wrote, and it was so beautifully written, and he explained the entire thinking and his emotional reaction after reading the firing subject, and it just connected with so many people.
yeah,
You said it was a mini MBA. You're 4 years over there, and you
definitely,
were very grateful and very humble for the experience you went through,
yeah, definitely. I think it
right?
was a lesson in so much, positives and
And you
negatives.
came up with four like subject matters.
Yeah,
From a time perspective, we only had time to maybe go through one,
yeah,
but you mentioned perception is reality. You are your best advocate. Relationships is always greater than the network,
hmm,
and you have to celebrate your wins and find your purpose.
yeah.
Which one of the four can you give us a specific example, or which one do you feel most deeply about?
Yeah, I think this has shifted over the past couple of months, but the one I'm hyper focused on right now is you being your best advocate. Following the layoff, like the amount of messages and like kind of emails I got from people I knew and didn't know that said, you brought so much impact to my life. Thank you for like giving me this platform. Thank you for celebrating me. I got X amount of money from a deal. All these things I never really processed or understood. Um, I kind of got through the lens of other people sharing how much impact I had on their life, right? And I think as people of color, you have a really hard challenge of celebrating your wins and being vocal about it. There's a lot of people that are good at talking versus, not great at actually doing the work, or like they're not great at what they do, but they just know how to talk about it well, right? That was something I got a really good lesson on at Meta, is the people that did really well were also really good talkers. So I think it's not necessarily, I think, being, arrogant or being kind of like self-fulfilling, but I do think you have to celebrate your wins and be vocal about impact you're able to drive. I think what you're able to accomplish, what you deserve. Like I also was never comfortable asking for money going into Meta, and that was like a big learning for me, is you have to advocate for yourself when you bring value to also get the rewards that I think you're deserving of too. So I think being your best advocate is definitely something I'm hyper focused on now too, especially LinkedIn, like especially after this piece got posted, right? So much happened out of that, including us meeting. And I realized like I do want to actually share a lot of the knowledge I have, and like share more of the experiences, learnings, things like that on platforms like LinkedIn, which I think is having a great moment right now just as a social platform. But the amount of opportunities that can come from this and just kind of sharing your learnings and your truth with the universe, I think so much cool stuff can happen from that. So I'm definitely focused on, being a little bit more confident and like embracing the things that I'm able to do and the value I'm able to bring, and being comfortable sharing that with decision makers, people, potential clients, whatever it might be. So again, just make sure
Sure. With
you're your
with your
best.
permission, with your permission, we'll share the blog on our show notes as well.
Yeah, would love that, and would definitely love any feedback from the community. If there's something that struck with you or resonated, like feel free to reach out. But yeah, happy to cut.
We only get negative feedback though. Don't worry. We only get negative feedback in our podcast.
Right,
So
we can definitely talk to
we're happy
that
to
too.
share that.
So what's
We can
next for
talk to that
Ankit?
too.
Like what's on the forefront? What's happening?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think it took me a couple months to realize, just because I'm such a busybody, I'm like someone who likes to be throwing myself in multiple things. It took me some time to realize like I've earned this time to really invest in myself and be comfortable with taking the time to, I think, build a little bit of ownership and opportunities for myself. So I'm a partner at one of the clothing brands that I'm helping build up called Le Court right now. So we're very much in the early stage of building this brand out. I'm also independently consulting for artists, creators, small businesses, especially if you're a person of color that's kind of struggling to understand how to grow your business. That's where I can definitely help step in. And then, building.
Podcasts,
What was that?
consulting for can you consult podcasts
We can
targeting South Asians?
we can definitely have that conversation. Yeah. We can definitely talk about that. And yeah, I think just investing time in passion projects. Like I think me wanting to build like a better personal brand and something I want to focus on more, doing things like this. Like I want to give myself a little bit more time and like energy to do stuff like this. And we'll see where I'm at when my health insurance runs out to see if there's anything changes.
Speaking
So
of time, what were your hours like when you were at Meta?
yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it was definitely less. It's crazy to even think about this. It was less intense than it was like at an agency and like even at Vimeo, right? Where sometimes my hours were 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. if we have a certain campaign coming out. I think Meta was one of those places where the busy times are really busy, but generally like things are kind of humming along. So my team kind of worked with people from California, London, here in New York. It was semi-global, so it would range. Honestly, there wasn't like
Okay.
common times, but I think sales was definitely way more stressful because money's on the line. So was
Yeah.
working, 9 to 6, 9 to 7 most days, high stress hours throughout that whole time too. I think at Instagram it was slightly less intensive from that perspective, but also I just felt like I knew I had a good handle on what I was talking about, like the strategic in terms of partnerships I wanted to lead. So I think
Okay.
like maybe I just got better about managing the time, but it was also like kind of
I feel
somewhere
like
between.
I have this perception of everyone at Meta like grinding 24/7,
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, it's very much like that.
Yeah.
There is like that toxic culture, and it's kind of it's almost incentivized by performance, right? Like the harder you work, the better, more money you'll make, the more stock you'll get. So I think teams like engineering, product development, sales, like I think they really
Where
fall into that bucket. For kind of the world I was in at Instagram, a lot of it was like working smarter versus harder, and like building things for long driving impact, like working on a project to just say you worked on it for 60 hours in a week where it doesn't really lead to anything is not a great use of time. So
for
maybe it
sure.
was also me just
Uh,
learning how to use my time better too.
Sabrina, the ones that did not get that email on May 24th are the ones that are still working those hours.
Might be right. I know there's definitely some people that didn't get the email that worked not even less than me, but we won't name names.
Yeah. Sorry, bad joke. We do this all the
Oh, it's
time.
Very
great.
bad
You
joke.
know, no, I know. I'm
I
full of
love
them.
it.
You
I
know what I
love
find ironic? I like the email of your firing is the reason why we're talking today.
Yeah.
Yet when I read the email, I thought this guy exudes success.
I did
You
too.
know, and
And leadership.
yeah, that and yeah, I just thought this guy, this guy's Indian. I want to talk to this guy. I want to bring him on the pod. It's so well written and the experience he's got. And then I thought, okay, let me look at his background. This guy must be an IIT graduate. He must be a hardcore techie. And then when you told me you're not even a techie and you've worked in all these companies, I started getting envy. I started going, no, I hate this guy. Like how can he get such good jobs? I want to know everything about this guy. So, uh, you know, I want to talk about success. Like, what is your definition of success? And has it evolved over time, over your short career?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Also, I hope that you don't feel envy. I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think you guys are doing such important work too, right? Like telling these stories of people doing amazing things that also happen to be Indian. Like, I think I'm tired of the narrative, the discourse of leading with identity and just not really focusing on that person's craft. So want to stop there and just say I love what you guys are doing too, because it's equally as important. But yeah, I think the definition of success has definitely changed for me. And I think it took me getting laid off to really understand that and lean into it, right? Like, I think I was at a company that so many people want to work at, and I was in rooms I had never thought I was going to be in. But I also like think about where I grew up and like my background and a lot of people that were my age that never really got to go into that or see it. So I think success for me initially was really just like being able to pay, my own rent in New York, right? Having a job that paid me enough to live and eat, like being able to travel. Like there was so many little things. And when I moved here, it started becoming like I need to be on Forbes 30 under 30. Like I need to be on every list imaginable. And it pissed me off because I think I wasn't advocating for myself enough to get myself on those lists. There's so many mechanics and like politicking to get on some of those. And I realized, again, through therapy and like through the processing and reflection in the past few months, that that's not really what I wanted. I don't think it was ever external validation. So I think success for me now is like that unwavering confidence that you don't need the backing of a massive company to do amazing work or like lead projects that you feel passionate about. I think for me, success is now feeling that confident that anything I do, I know I'm going to bring value. And even like right now, I don't think I'm fully there right now. Like I think there's still work I'm doing in terms of building that up and being on my own in terms of being my own backing. But you realize you also have the power of community, right? So I think that's something I'm definitely celebrating and understanding and leveraging. Is I think having community is also a success metric, right? People that care about you, support you, uplift you. I think that's one of those things that we don't think about and talk about enough. So
Yeah.
it's definitely the long
I
way to
love
say that it's definitely evolved. It's definitely evolved.
When you were talking about being your best advocate, I was going to say that means having, that self confidence. And I felt like when you were saying that you have found that, through your experience. And you said going through this at, an early part of your career, going to a therapist, all those different things you're doing for your betterment. And that's what you said now. It's, having that confidence, and you could see that you do now.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of trials and tribulations, right? I think failures are a big part of it, but I think the reflection that follows it is definitely where, if you get through one thing, you can get yourself on the other side of it too. It's exciting
For
to kind of see what's on the other side of that mountain, essentially.
Okay, who have been your role models in life?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it also just is constantly shifting. I think my parents have always been kind of role models for me, just in terms of making the bet on themselves and investing in their education when everything was telling them not to do and not to leave India, right? I think moving to a place like Idaho was extremely isolating for them, and to have built the life they did, I think is incredibly powerful. We didn't grow up like, super rich and wealthy. Like we lived a very middle class life, maybe sometimes even lower middle class when they had their accidents, but they were always there. They invested in my education. So I think how they live their lives and how they emphasize community, they've always been kind of role models. I think my sister's another one of them. She also doesn't work in STEM and has built a great successful career in sales. So I think family's been a big one, but I think Everett Taylor at Kickstarter, he's the CEO of Kickstarter, incredible CEO, incredible executive. That's really kind of paving the new way for what companies should operate like, and how do you celebrate creators while also being an incredible company. And I think kind of like similar to that realm, Anjali Sood was also someone I think really navigated that concept and becoming like an internal executive through working really hard. And then Padma Lakshmi, I have to name her because I am a huge fan of Padma Lakshmi. Hopefully she'll see this. I don't know. We'll see. But I think, yeah, what she's done in like the media and entertainment world is incredible. Like celebrating food through different cultures, celebrating different parts of our identity. I think building like such a successful career in like arts and entertainment. I think it really helps when you see people that look like you being able to succeed and be a household name, right? Like that's what it is. It's cool to see South Asian people being household names in ways that are not just the best doctor, right, or the best engineer, or the best like CEO of a tech company that's actually technical. So it's
Yeah,
I think it's inspiring to see people doing that world.
very cool.
Yep.
Great answer.
Sabrina and I are hoping to be in the list of 50 under 50.
There you go. Who knows? Right? Maybe it might even be like 100 under 100 at some point. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
all lists are toxic as hell, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But I do have
We're on our way, Sabrina.
I do have some friends on 30 under 30 this year. I'm incredibly proud of them. Like there's definitely the people that have more than earned it, and I think like it's incredibly inspiring to see them. So I think as much as role models, some of my peers are role models too. Like I want to plug that in too. That doesn't have to be necessarily someone older than you or even like in the same field.
For
Some of my
sure.
peers are some of my
Sure.
biggest role models too. So definitely want to celebrate.
You can introduce us to your 30 under 30 afterwards as well.
Yeah.
You can bring them on. We're a bit tight with time. Can we jump into the rapid fire, Sabrina?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's run it.
Okay, I will
I'm
start.
nervous. I'm a
Yes.
little nervous now.
Ladies
Okay.
first.
I
Quick
changed.
answers, Ankit.
Yeah.
I changed one. So the first one. What is the first vinyl you bought?
Oh, the first vinyl I bought was Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the first one.
You know the first one I received. I don't remember the year, but it was the Bodyguard soundtrack
The
with
Bodyguard.
Whitney Houston.
Okay, gotcha.
Whitney.
There's definitely some Whitney Houston and then in the collection now too. So
Yeah, that was my
we're
first one.
building up.
Okay, next. Should social media be age gated? Just like tobacco, driving a car, age of, alcohol when you get married. So social media, given your role in social media, should there be an age barrier? I know
No.
it's a long
Yeah,
question, but we just want a
yeah.
yes or a no.
I'm gonna say no with an asterisk mark and leave it at that.
Okay. When you go to the bathroom, what is your go-to social media platform to
Oh man,
browse through?
this one has also evolved. I'm currently probably the most obsessed with Reels again. I like did never wanted to open Instagram after working
I
there
was
for
going
a
to
while.
ask
I was
that.
just you're just in it all day, so I didn't want to open it. But Reels definitely is like where I'm at.
Okay. It sucks you in.
It sucks you in. Imagine working there, you're doing this all day long. So I was
Oh,
like just tired.
goodness.
And I'm finally coming out of it again.
Me too. There's another man
All right.
that Instagram, by the way.
Yeah, I know, but again, he's young. Men who have experience,
No.
age, and many other positive things, they follow, TikTok or Twitter or YouTube.
Mm,
But men who are not too sure about their sex, or who have been recently been laid, off their job, they stick to Instagram. That's my
Do you
theory.
know
yeah.
demographics of male versus female on Instagram?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely more female leaning, but it'll be interesting to keep track of over time now because I think you're seeing a lot more male content creators now too in different spaces.
Hmm.
But
But like 80-20, like
um,
4 girls for every guy, or
I don't remember the numbers. I'm also not even sure if I'm allowed to share it at this point. But we'll just say it's definitely more female leaning. I'm very anti
you're not
TikTok.
working there anymore.
Like I'm not
You're
into.
not working there anymore.
Yeah,
What's the problem?
who knows? Maybe my health insurance will end earlier than it's supposed to.
Yeah, don't chance it. Don't listen
Yeah,
to
Okay,
I can't chance
okay,
that.
great. Next, let's. Who is the goat? MJ, LeBron. Who is the goat?
Kobe all day, every day.
it. All right.
Kobe. Okay.
Love it. Um, what is your next bucket list item you want to cross off?
Traveling to Japan, which I'm actually doing in 2 weeks. So I'm
All
super
right.
excited. But that's been a
Awesome. Good for
bucket
you.
list item since high school.
It's a good birthday gift. Good
Yeah,
birthday gift.
yeah,
Yes.
incredibly
Safe
excited.
trip.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Yeah.
I had March 2020 booked Japan, and then something called COVID hit, and it was cancelled.
I don't recall what that
And
was.
Yeah.
yeah, and I haven't been.
Yeah.
Last one. Last one. Your legacy. If you had in New York Times Square a big board with nice, colorful, bright LED lights, and you had to put 5-10 words, that sums up Ankit's journey, what would it be? What would it say?
Man,
We
this
never
one's
said this would be easy.
this one's a tough one.
Well, it is the last
I
one.
think
So
if I had to summarize it though, it's that that I inspired and impacted people around the world, and was the best advocate for them to do great things in the world too. Like I think that's really what it is for me.
got it.
Awesome.
And Ankit, if anybody wants to reach out to you, any Instagram or what email ID, or how should someone reach out to you?
Yeah,
LinkedIn?
I'm Ankit Vij on all the socials. So another tip for everyone: make sure your handle is the same across everything for SEO and just for personal
That's a good
branding. But
tip.
yeah, I'm Ankit Vij on everything essentially. But yeah, feel free to reach out. However, I don't always check my Instagram DMs just because those get crazy. So LinkedIn's probably better, but feel free to drop me an Instagram DM too if you need to.
Oh, you're getting a lot of DMs on Instagram.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Instagram is going crazy. I don't get it. Does that mean he gets like 100 DMs?
It's a considerable amount, and it's like it's one of those things you can tell people who don't work there anymore, and they're still asking you for verification or like Instagram support. So it's a lot of that, and then there's a lot
Ah.
of people that like want to get like put in partnerships, things like that. So it's a lot. It's a mess.
How many? How many are female, good-looking girls under the age of 30?
Oh my god, my girlfriend's gonna kill me after this, but I think recently, especially with the verification piece, and not making any assessments or judgments here, but it does tend to be women, and specifically women that are I think Instagram models essentially or aspiring Instagram models. So we'll leave it at that. She
They're
knows
all
my
in.
passcode though. If Melissa's listening, she knows my passcode. She can check if she
Aw. Hey, okay. First, I want to say, okay, LaCourte, we wish you all the best on all your ventures. LaCourte, your blog can be found on Substack if
yeah.
people enter your name, and we will put that link. But I also want to end with a quote that was in your blog, something you wrote. We live in a world where we're constantly seeking the next new thing or task to accomplish. Enjoy the ride and stop and smell the flowers once in a while. I think that's so important
Nice.
for people to hear. So, as many times as you can repeat it, keep doing it. I love the
Yeah.
blog.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate you taking the time to read, and I think that was something I'm still kind of trying to remind myself of every day. But it's important we all do it, right? The next day is not
That's,
guaranteed. I think I learned that very young, but I think you have to stop and celebrate every little moment as much as you can.
I think you're a wise soul. So thank you. Thank you for coming here and sharing what you've been through with us, your journey so far. And truly, I can't wait to see what you continue to do.
Yeah, no, I
And happy
appreciate
birthday
both of you
next
for
week.
this. Appreciate both of you for having this platform, doing this podcast, like sharing so many of these great stories. Like the Bombay Taylor and Company story was amazing too. So really appreciate you both for actually hosting and building this experience and holding space for us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
This has been another episode of Indian Explorers, a fantastic episode. We hope you enjoyed it as well. Please subscribe and share it with others. Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.